Chọn yêu thương, chọn hạnh phúc.
Trong bài trình bày đầu tiên tại hội thảo Thay đổi vì một trường học hạnh phúc, giáo sư Peck Cho đã có những phân tích để làm rõ sự cấp thiết của việc cần phải thay đổi cách vận hành trường học và cải cách hệ thống giáo dục ngay lúc này. Đó không chỉ được xem như một sự cấp thiết cần phải thực hiện, mà đồng thời cũng là cơ hội cho giáo dục Việt Nam. Giáo sư Peck Cho đã chỉ ra những việc mà chúng ta cần làm để có thể cải cách giáo dục thực tế, hiệu quả và bền vững. Mục tiêu của giáo dục cần phải thay đổi. Ghi nhớ kiến thức bây giờ không còn là điều quan trọng nữa. Người học cần được trang bị các kỹ năng cảm xúc xã hội trong quãng thời gian đi học để có thể trở thành những con người sáng tạo, thành công và hạnh phúc. Trong bài trình bày tiếp theo, giáo sư Peck Cho sẽ chia sẻ rõ hơn với chúng ta cách thức để có thể hướng dẫn cảm xúc trong trường học.
I plan to talk about how to teach emotion coaching, but then I made a slight change. Based on what I heard in the morning, I think there's a bit of confusion between happiness and success. What I gather was that you are concerned that when you pursue happiness, somehow you put aside success. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. So my thoughts about success and happiness might be somewhat different from yours. So I like to explain what I think is happiness and success first. In my life, I have met many unhappy students and parents and people. I was a director of the National Counseling Center for Students, and I was the principal in a junior high for misbehaving kids. On the other side, I've been dealing with what you call excellent students. I was chief judge of the selecting in a national talent search, as well as for Samsung company. And I was also the director of a center for gifted children. So I have dealt with two extreme ends of spectrum. It is a common belief that the students here are bound to failure and unhappiness, and the student on that side is bound for success and happiness in life. Do you also agree? No, I'm glad to hear that. Because you never know the future. They may be the number one student in the school or in the very bottom in the school. You will never know how they will turn out in life. From my personal experience, I have seen those students become very successful and happy, and some of them, the most talented in Korea, bound to the failure and unhappy life. It can go either way. But that doesn't mean that you put your hands down and wait for things to happen naturally. Although we cannot predict the future, we know what we need to do now to help all of them go the other side to being successful and happy. So it's not a choice between happy and success. The goal of a happy school is to also provide them with the guidance to be successful in life. I'm sure in Vietnam that you have millionaires who are very unhappy. Is that right? And I know you have colleagues who have attained very high positions in life, and they are very unhappy too. So we are about to guide your students and your teachers to be both successful and happy simultaneously. Everybody, including you and I, have both the potential as well as weaknesses. But many teachers, they think their job is to focus on the development of the potential. So you want to help your students to achieve the fullest, the maximum of their potential. But the potential and the vulnerability they are two sides of a coin. So, for example, if you enlarge the potential, you also enlarge vulnerability. That's why even the gifted students who get massive, the best education, they end up miserable. Many of them suffer from high depression. And eventually they fail in life. So what can we do? What should we be doing? Obviously, we have to make sure that their potential is realized. But how about the weaknesses and the vulnerability? We cannot shrink that because it's two sides of a same coin. So if we shrink it, potential also shrinks. So instead of focusing on decreasing the weaknesses, we have to increase the resilience in students. But I don't need to talk much about the resilience to you, because I know the Vietnamese is one of the most resilient people in the world. So let me go back to my original position of what success and happiness. You see that many people say, I need to be successful so that I can be happy. They think their happiness is the result of being successful. So they postpone being happy. Then you will always be unhappy. I know you have people that you know, your family members, your parents, your grandparents, friends who fall into that trap. If you want to be happy later, you have to be happy now. It's not about becoming or getting to be successful in life, but it's about living a successful life. In the morning, Dr. To talked about being happy versus feeling happy. They are not the same thing. Feeling happy is transient. It's temporary. Being happy is your existence. Many people say, oh, my life is so difficult, my life is so hard, therefore I must be unhappy. Then the person, when life becomes easy and comfortable, they will still say, I am unhappy. Happiness is not about feeling happy. I might be having a very difficult time, I might be having a difficult problem to solve, but I can be happy at that point. Being happy is in spite of difficulties and hardness. So I'm talking about happy school in terms of being a very, very successful school as well.
Khi nói đến trường học hạnh phúc, không phải là lựa chọn hạnh phúc thay vì thành công. Mục tiêu của trường học hạnh phúc là việc hướng dẫn học sinh cách để có thể thành công và hạnh phúc trong đời sống. Nếu muốn hạnh phúc trong tương lai, chúng ta cần hạnh phúc ngay bây giờ. giáo sư Peck Cho đã cung cấp cho chúng ta những quan điểm từ góc nhìn của ông về thành công và hạnh phúc, cũng như cách chúng ta cần hiểu khi đưa hạnh phúc vào trong giáo dục. Đó có lẽ là những nền tảng để chúng ta bắt đầu bước tiếp trong việc hướng dẫn học sinh đạt được cả hạnh phúc và thành công trong đời sống. Chúng ta sẽ phải làm như thế nào? Mời quý vị và các thầy cô cùng tiếp tục theo dõi.
Now let me go back to the morning's question I throw it to you, namely, how can we teach social emotional skills? It's all about engaging students' mind. But there's a difficulty here. If you want to engage students' mind, you have to know what mind is, and you have to know where the mind is. Do you know where your mind is? No? All right, everybody point your finger out. Finger out. Everybody. Show me where your mind is. Where is your mind? No, you don't know? Here? Oh, there? Then you came from different stars. Your body structure is different. I will tell you exactly where your mind is. Only when you know what mind is and where it is, you can meet students' mind and you can engage your mind and you can earn their mind and heart and you can lead them to success and happiness. Now, many of you who said here think that mind is more about thinking. And many of you here, when you put your finger here, you feel that mind is more like a feeling and emotion. But there is a brand new emerging science called neurocardiology. That there is a neural system not only in your brain, but in your heart as well. And there is a tremendous connection and communication between two brains. And the mind is that connection. That's why sometimes you think the mind is somewhere there, and then other times you think that you feel the mind is somewhere there. Mind is not located in anywhere, but is the connected state. It's like a temperature in this room. Temperature sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down, right? So mind also moves up and down. Sometimes it goes so far that it's out of mind. And the mind is extremely important in learning. Let me show you the proof. I'm going to ask you two questions. And I want you to answer to this question by showing yes or no. Okay, practice. Yes, no. Okay, very good. First question. When I was a small student, grade student, I memorized multiplication table in one try. No, in one try. I'm glad you said no. Even genius will say no. We have to repeat 100 and 1,000 times to memorize it, didn't you? All right. Second question. I still remember my first kiss. The question is not that you don't want to remember. That's not the question. Even if you want to forget, you still remember. Is that right? Professor Dr. To, after so many years, he still remembers his first kiss. But why is that? The multiplication table is so darn hard to memorize and remember. But first kiss, so easy. Why? Looks like you're all remembering your first kiss right now. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we make multiplication table like first kiss? Then all students will be brilliant in mathematics. The key is in emotion. anything that evokes strong emotion is something that you remember. Whether good memory, a good emotion or even negative emotion doesn't matter. Emotion is the deciding factor for you to decide whether you want to remember or dump it away. So if learning becomes emotionally fun and engaging, all students will be brilliant in learning. When classroom material does not trigger any emotion, students don't care. As you can see, the amygdala in the brain is the control center for emotion, and hippocampus is the center for memory, and they act simultaneously together in conjunction. But emotion triggered, although in the head, is sent down to the body through your nervous system and your hormonal system, and they together affect your heart most strongly. That's why symbolically thinking is the head and symbolically feeling is your heart. So if you want your students to pay attention in classroom and learn your material easily, then you have to engage them not just intellectually but emotionally simultaneously. So the next time you tell your teachers, don't just prepare the curriculum, but then ask them to design learning experience. Maybe you don't say, oh, what's the difference? There's a huge difference. Curriculum, all the teachers, when they plan for the lesson, they think about, oh, what should I teach next time? Or how much do I teach? What kind of problems should I give students to analyze and solve, right? Most of it is the brain activity, the cognitive activities, the thinking part of it. But then learning experience is when I present this material, geez, how would my students react? What kind of the sense of curiosity that I'm going to generate? Will my students feel the sense of adventure and maybe get a new vision for the future? And whether they can find the meaning and value and how it might apply to their future. Those are affective domain activities. Sense of curiosity, sense of adventure, and sense of challenge, those are all feelings, sensations, sense. By the way, affective domain means emotional domain. So when we design both of them, then we engage students thinking and feeling simultaneously, so I move their mind. Then, only then I can engage my students' mind. Okay, I still see a few people not convinced. So I'm going to give you another example. You listen to this.
저 바다가 없었다면 쓰라린 이 별만은 없었을 것은 해저문 부두에서 떠나가는 연락선을 가슴 아프게 바라보지.
If I talk like this whole afternoon, you'll be all sleeping like this person. The content is very important, but you will be all careless. You will be all sleeping and I will be very sad. But let me add melody to it.
Hãy để tôi thêm giai điệu.
Isn't it wonderful?
Có hay không ạ?
Perhaps you can listen whole afternoon. I see some young principals here, so maybe this wasn't a good example. So let me throw in a modern version.
I am in the stars tonight, so watch me bring the fire and set the night. A light shoes on, get up in the morn, cup of milk, let's rock.
Do you like it? Now let me add melody. Now you need to get out, right? I can watch this whole day, and I can remember the lyrics, and I can remember the melody. I only listen once, and I can remember forever. That's the power of having thinking and feeling conjoined simultaneously, and that's how you move people's mind. Somehow, we got rid of emotion in classrooms. No wonder students are very bored. We need to bring emotion into classroom and in learning. Especially, emotion is integrative in nature. Thinking is about difference. You think differently from young people. So old people think different from young people. Men think slightly different from women. Vietnamese think slightly different from Koreans. People from 2,000 years ago think somewhat different from modern people. Thinking is analytical, and they thrive on differences. Emotion is entirely opposite. When a child is sad and cries, it looks exactly like an old man being sad and they cry. They look the same. And when a woman is sad, man sad is very similar. Unhappy Koreans look exactly like unhappy Vietnamese. Emotion integrates. It transcends the time and location. Emotion unites people. This morning we talked about how connection is important, how emotional attunement is important, right? We need to take advantage of these very, very special characteristics of emotion. Again, let me repeat. It's integrative, it's uniting, it's connecting. Teachers have to take advantage of that special characteristic and connect and unite and be on the same side with students. Only then you can lead and they will follow willingly.
Giáo sư Peck Cho đã cho chúng ta thấy những đặc tính đặc biệt của cảm xúc và lợi thế của việc đưa cảm xúc vào việc thiết kế bài giảng và trải nghiệm học tập cho học sinh. Cảm xúc là yếu tố quyết định việc con người sẽ nhớ đến điều gì và sẽ bỏ qua điều gì. Học sinh khi đi học cũng như vậy. Bài giảng của giáo viên, ngoài việc truyền đạt các kiến thức, cần khơi gợi và nuôi dưỡng cảm giác tò mò, phiêu lưu, thử thách của người học. Khi đó, chúng ta sẽ thu hút được đồng thời cả tư duy và cảm xúc của học trò, tức là ta đã kéo được tâm trí của chúng vào bài học. Như vậy, việc thu hút tâm trí người học đã được thực hiện. Cảm xúc cũng rất quan trọng trong việc phát huy khả năng sáng tạo của con người. Chúng ta sẽ cùng tiếp tục theo dõi để hiểu rõ hơn về vấn đề này.
Emotion is extremely important in creativity as well. Many people don't think creativity is related to emotion. I'm sure you all want your students to be creative, don't you? Yes? Then you need to engage your emotion. Let me give you a scientific proof. It's only be found in year 2018, only 4 years ago, by a team of researchers from Harvard, UPenn, and one more school, Johns Hopkins University. The research about default mode is a very common sense. The power of brain is not so much about how many brain cells you have in your head. We all have many brain cells. Even the geniuses and the idiots have pretty much the same number of brain cells. The power lies in how they are connected. What kind of a neural network is in the head? Let me explain the old information about brain. Brain is complex, but mainly it has very inside the stem that deals with life. And you all learn in psychology, we call this reptilian brain. Then on top of that, there's a limbic system that basically deals with the emotion. But even dogs and cats and cows have this part of the brain that deals with emotion. But the human is not a dog or cat. So we have cortex, neocortex, especially in the front part that deals with thinking. We learned that all three parts of the brain needs to function well for person to act like a human being. But when you are stressed out, frustrated, angry, sad, then you have something called emotional flooding, and your brain gets connected vertically. Life, motion, and not thinking, but motion. Bodily motion. When you are angry and sad and frustrated, you end up becoming a reptile. And reptile, all they do is fight or flight. You know that. That's a psychology basics. So the brain on the negative emotion is all about surviving, keeping your life. So you end up moving, fighting, or running away. This is old information. The new information is that when you are thinking, your thinking brain works. Is that right? But when you are being creative and when you are studying that is meaningful things, not rote memorization, the mad education, remember? But when you are engaged in real, valuable learning, not only your front part of the brain, the neocortex, is functioning, but your emotion is, the limbic system is engaged tremendously. An ability to deal with that situation is what we call EQ, not IQ. Ability to use this part of the brain is called IQ, but the ability to use that part of the brain is called emotional intelligence. But the important point is that brain becomes vertically connected under negative emotion, but is horizontally connected in positive emotion. Remember I said that mind is thinking and feeling how they are connected together? So I call this MQ, mind intelligence. IQ is something that you are born with. You cannot change your student's IQ, but we spend so much time trying to develop IQ. Only thing the schools can help students with is the emotional intelligence. It's not something that you are born with, it's something that you learn and you are taught. And the best creativity will happen in a positive emotional state.
Quý vị thầy cô và khán giả đang theo dõi Hội thảo thay đổi vì một trường học hạnh phúc. Việc hiểu được các đặc tính, sự quan trọng của cảm xúc đối với khả năng sáng tạo và hứng thú học tập của học sinh từ những phân tích khoa học như giáo sư Peck Cho đã trình bày giúp chúng ta có một cái nhìn rõ ràng và rộng mở hơn đối với việc thiết kế các bài học trên lớp. Trí thông minh cảm xúc nên cần được trở thành phần trọng tâm của giáo dục trong tương lai. Những năng lực của trí thông minh cảm xúc là những kỹ năng có thể học được và dạy được. Chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục theo dõi bài trình bày của giáo sư Peck Cho để hiểu rõ hơn về các chức năng của cảm xúc và lý giải tại sao mà cảm xúc lại quan trọng như vậy đối với con người.
So then question is, why emotion? Why emotion so important? It's the function of emotion. We know emotions is important in this and that, but why? How is it important is something that I need to describe to you now. Number one, emotion is the driving force for motion. I like the word emotion because it is actually two words, E, which means out, motion. So when you have an emotion, it creates motion. That's why when you have students in a very difficult emotional state, it's very hard to keep them calm. Number two, emotion is a medium for what? What do you think? Emotion is something that you feel. Do you feel your emotion? Do you feel happy right now? Why? Why do you feel it? Why? Do you feel frustrated to this question? Why do you feel it? How do I know you are happy? How do I know you are frustrated? It shows in your expression, isn't it? Expression. It's something that you cannot look at yourself. Expression is for someone else to look at, right? So, expression is a communication medium. It tells other people what kind of state I am at. It's communicating about me to other people. Emotion is something that I feel is telling me about who, where, what state I am at. Both are communication medium. If emotion or expression is ignored, it becomes big. For example, you are angry, but then if I don't notice it, then you become angrier because you want to communicate your anger to me. But if I catch your emotion, it already served its function. Therefore, emotion becomes useless, so it subsides. That's the power of empathy. I know it takes time to sink in, but on your way back to your hometown, think about it. But let me give an example, analogy. Your child, okay, is watching TV, is playing game, and you say, dear boy, why don't you turn off your TV and study? You say gently, right? And your child ignores you. Then what happens? Your voice becomes louder. I told you to turn TV off. And if the boy still ignores you, then you go, so it becomes a bigger and bigger and end up with a motion. Same thing with this. Emotion and expression are communication. And if it's not ignored, if it's ignored and not heard, then emotion has to become bigger and bigger and end up with an action. But if you tell your son, can you turn off the TV and study? And if your son turn TV off and study, then you say, turn TV off. No, you don't do that, right? Your message is delivered, therefore you don't say anything anymore. So, in order to have relationship, you got to have a communication, and there are two types of communication, verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication is what you say, And non-verbal communication is your expression, your movements. Those are non-verbal. Which is stronger communication, you think? Which verbal or non-verbal? Which is stronger portion of communication? Non-verbal, verbal. Non-verbal is 93%. Especially children, they have a limited verbal abilities. So they express their emotions in a bodily way. So in order to communicate, especially with children, you have not only to talk, but you have to have emotional attunement. That's how you listen to their emotion. I talk, you listen, but we are constantly attuning our affective state. So in order to have good relationship, you got to have a good communication, then you got to empathize and listen. You got to have both. And you have to empathize much, much more because that is 93% of communication. But many parents will say, calm down, let's be logical about it. If you are logical about it, you are communicating only 7%. The moment you put aside emotion, there's no communication, there's no relationship. Do you agree? Empathizing is important now. If you agree that emotional attunement is important part of communication and relationship building, then you got to be aware of emotion. So emotional coaching has 5 steps. First step is being aware of emotion. Second step is when the child is showing emotion, you got to welcome the situation. When a student shows a big emotion, we want to run away, right? That is severe in communication and relationship. So you got to embrace and welcome the opportunity. Then, because they have a limited verbal ability, now rather than acting out, you help them verbalize emotion. When students become angry, when they feel anger, they show it, right? They are sad, they show it. But we help them say, I feel uncomfortable, I feel unhappy, I feel angry, I feel sad. Because they can communicate either non-verbally or we can teach them to communicate verbally. Only when you have gone through these 4 steps, then we talk about behavior. But in the morning, I said, many parents and teachers, they ignore all this and go directly to do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Not only is it counterproductive, it's totally ineffective.
Chúng ta đang theo dõi phần đầu tiên của bài trình bày số 3 trong khuôn khổ hội thảo Thay đổi vì một trường học hạnh phúc với nội dung làm thế nào để hướng dẫn cảm xúc trong trường học và trong gia đình do giáo sư Peck Cho trình bày. Trong phần 2, giáo sư Peck Cho sẽ tiếp tục quay trở lại với những phân tích chi tiết hơn về 5 bước của hướng dẫn cảm xúc cũng như những cách thức thực tế để ứng dụng hướng dẫn cảm xúc trong trường học, hướng tới mục tiêu xây dựng trường học hạnh phúc. Mời quý thầy cô và quý vị khán giả cùng theo dõi.